guys, it's Tahira and today I'm doing my January wrap up. So in the month of January, I read a total of 6 books, which is really great because it's more than what's been my average for the past few months. But I know it's because the first week of January was winter break, so I had a lot of free time to read, and it was the beginning of a new semester, and I always have more free time during the beginning because there's less work. So yeah, I read a lot this month and I'm really excited to show you guys what I read. The first book I read in the month of January was Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, which I gave a 4.35 out of 5 stars. This book was a really long read for me. It took me about 3 weeks to read it, which is not my normal. I don't know if it was the size or if I also read it at a really bad time. Like, I was going into finals when I started this, and then my family came over from Canada and I got really busy with that, so I didn't have much chance to read, so it took me a little while. But in the end, I didn't love it as much as I hoped I would. Again, I told you I gave it 4.35 out of 5 stars, which is not typical for me in Cassandra Clare books. I usually give all Cassandra Clare books 5 out of 5 stars because I genuinely love them. But this was totally not one of my favorite finales ever. Like, I wanted it to be like sad, like Clockwork Princess sad and devastating, but it wasn't like that, and I was a little disappointed with this book. I really loved the characters and I loved the way it talked about grief, because this is a spoiler for Lord of Shadows, but Livy died in the last book in Robert Lightwood. So the whole grief, the beginning of the book, surrounds the grief of the family and how each family is dealing with the loss of their sister, and that was really interesting and wonderful to read about. That's not something that's much explored, but also there's this whole thing of this chunk in the middle where it takes place somewhere else, somewhere that's never been explored before in a Cassandra Clare novel, and I didn't love the way it was executed. It felt really typical and stereotypical, and it felt like it was ordinary or average or something that I was expecting, and there was no huge shocks except for like a few, but it wasn't as shocking as I wanted it to be, and it just felt really long. I felt like it could have been shortened down a lot because this is a 900 or like 912 page book or something like that, and so it's really big, and it took me a while, and while I was reading it, it felt like it was just dragging on and forever. So I wish it was shorter, but overall I enjoyed it. The second book that I read in the month of January was An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing is Hank Green's debut novel following this girl named April May, who is one day walking down the streets of Manhattan when she sees that this giant statue, this metal statue, has dropped out of nowhere. So she takes a video of this statue and she posts it on the internet, and she goes viral within the day. She goes viral within the day, and she kind of deals with the fame as well as trying to figure out where these statues, which are named Carls, where they came from. I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of my new favorites of the year. It was so good. I loved the writing style. In my opinion, it was really unpredictable. Like, nowhere in the story did I know what was gonna happen next. It was all very strange, and I was like, throughout the book I was like, what the heck is happening? What is going on? But I loved that, and I loved how Hank Green took this weird story and how he talked about fame and stuff, which is relatable to like our modern day and age. I really loved it, and it's one of my new favorites of the year. The third book that I read in the month of January was To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I read To All the Boys I've Loved Before because, of course, I watched the movie first, and then I really wanted to read the book to see how it was different, and I was actually on hold for it, and I was like the 11th in line, so I only got a chance to get my hands on it in December. But I read it and it was okay. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really wanted to give 5 out of 5 stars because the movie for me is a 5 out of 5 stars. I love the movie so much. But the book felt a little different. It felt really slow in the beginning. Like, there was a lot of background in the book that was covered in the movie in like 5 minutes, and I felt like it was dragging me out, and the main story didn't really start until a little later in the story, and everything felt like kind of dragged and then rushed, and I feel like the pacing could have been a lot better than it was. I still really enjoyed it, but yeah, definitely I didn't really love Lara Jean. Also, I like her in the movie, but I feel like she was more immature, more childlike in the book, which I didn't really like. Overall, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. The fourth book that I read in the month of January was Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali. Saints and Misfits follows a girl named Jana, who is a Muslim American teen, and she is sexually assaulted by a well-respected man at her mosque, and it's her story how she comes to terms with this and how she deals with it. I really love this book because it talks about a Muslim American teen's experience, because I am one of them. So it was really nice to read about that, and I've also never heard of any story of sexual assault in the Muslim community. I feel like it's never talked about. It definitely happens, but I don't know, it's never talked about. I never really heard a story. So it was really, really nice to read about a story because it was really eye-opening. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I felt like the writing was sometimes juvenile and a little choppy, which I didn't really love. But overall, the story I really loved, and sometimes the character was not consistent. Like, for example, the girl Jana, she's a hijabi, so she does hijab, and she's really adamant about it. She's really careful about it. She always wears it when she goes to school, when she goes outside, and she feels uncomfortable when she's not wearing it. But this boy that she likes starts talking to her, and she kind of becomes careless with her hijab. She doesn't wear in front of him. She wants to show off her hair or whatever. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just that it's been set up that she has such these strong morals about how she wants to wear her hijab and how her hair is for her and she doesn't have to show it to anyone. It's her choice. And then she kind of lets it all go when she meets this boy. And I didn't really like that narrative. I have no idea if I'm making sense or not, but it's just that how it was set up in the book, where it was like, oh, I'm not taking off my hijab is my choice, I'm like really strong about it, and then it just goes all out the window when this boy comes around. I just really hoped that that wouldn't be the case, but it was. But overall, I still enjoyed the book, and I'm really glad I read it. The next book I read in January was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I finally read this book. I got this book last March when it first released because it was super hyped, and then I just picked it up in December, which really shows what my priorities are in my TBR and how big it is. But yeah, I read it. I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the writing style and the story, even though at sometimes the story didn't feel super duper original. It was really addicting, and I love the writing style, and I love the way Tomi Adeyemi set up the world. I'm so nervous for what happens in the second book. I'm so excited for Children of Virtue and Vengeance, and I am so happy that I really liked this book. The last book that I read in the month of January was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I read Shadow and Bone because King of Scars came out on January 29th, I believe, and I wanted to reread the Grisha trilogy in preparation for that, so I have read Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm, but yes, I finished this in January. I haven't read the Shadow and Bone series for quite a while. I think it's been 2 years now, so it was really nice to revisit the world. The thing is, this was my 3rd time reading Shadow and Bone, and I didn't remember anything. Like, nothing. Like, this was my 3rd time. That means I've read it twice before, and before reading this reread, if you had asked me, hey, what happened in Shadow and Bone? I'll be like, I don't know. It was weird. I didn't remember anything, but I really enjoyed rereading it because even though it's not Leigh Bardugo's best writing, I love Six of Crows. That's my favorite of Leigh Bardugo's, but it was still enjoyable. I love the world, and it's just something nostalgic almost. Like, I loved the experience of reading it, even though I don't remember anything from this particular details from the story. I remember the experience of reading it. I remember I was sucked into the world and I love it. And a lot of people say it's an average book, and I can agree with that. There's not much that's super extraordinary or over original, but I still really enjoyed the experience, and I loved Leigh Bardugo's take on it, and also the world, how it's based in Russia. Russian-based land and mythologies and culture. I really love that aspect of it. I give this like a 4 out of 5 stars just on my pure enjoyment of the story. Even though the story is not the best in the world, I still really loved it. But yeah, that is it for my January wrap-up. Let me know down below what was your favorite book that you read in the month of January, as I would love to know. But that is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!